There's a big and very dangerous scam transpiring right now in Arizona, and it's happening right out in the open.
We talk about phase one of the insurgency to take back our schools, and you know what that is? Doing exactly what Charlie Kirk is doing with Turning Point Academy. We have to build our own schools that educate kids the way kids were educated at the founding of this country.
This is not a prank. Charlie Kirk, the right-wing vlogger and author of a book about why college is bad, is opening up his own schools in Arizona. Schools for kids. The school is a collab between Kirk and schools already run by Dream City, a far-right megachurch that claimed in 2020 to have eliminated COVID with an air filter in order to lure people to an indoor Trump rally.
Students from pre-K through 12th grade will be offered curriculum and programs to equip our children with the tools necessary to defend objective truth.
And despite what he says here,
is their parents are sick of government schools and they want alternatives.
The real objective truth is that Charlie Kirk's weird new school is actually getting funded by the state government thanks to Arizona's new school privatization scheme, and at the expense of the 1 million kids enrolled in Arizona public schools.
It's all sort of the same ideology of, removing the public good and propping up private corporate interests. Education to them is, well, for some folks it's a way to spread religion. For some folks it's just straight profit.
This is the right wing's endgame. The hysterical protests, the book bans, obsession with critical race theory. All of it is cooked up by the religious right and dark money billionaires to crush public schools and turn education systems into factories of extremism and profit. And it's breaking through in states across the country. Since 2021, at least 15 GOP-led states have established or expanded school voucher programs. We went to Arizona, the most advanced front in the war on public education, to see the catastrophic impact of the GOP scheme and how people have been fighting back. The stakes couldn't be higher.
Arizona teachers met at the Capitol today to rally against the passing of bills in the House and the Senate that would expand the state's school voucher program.
Teachers from all over the state met on the Capitol lawn today, President's Day, to protest school voucher bills that they say would cut funding from public schools and give more to charter schools.
Arizona Republicans promised that their education savings account program wouldn't cost much, because every time a kid used a voucher, the state funding for their education would simply transfer with them from public schools to their new charter or private school.
They get $7,000 to $40,000 put into a class wallet account.
The catch? Anyone can use it, including kids that already go to private schools.
We know that 80% of the kids that are using universal ESAs had already chosen private school. So every time that child's family takes a voucher, it's a direct subtraction from the local public school. And I can tell you those local public schools cannot afford that subtraction. There are 85,000 kids that are in private school and homeschool. Why would they not all take free government money with no strings attached?
The Arizona voucher program's ballooned. It's 10 times over budget what these groups were projecting last summer when the Ducey administration pushed this through the legislation.
How did it get so bad? It wasn't by popular demand, but by the relentlessness of ideological and corporate interests.
By far the two biggest organizations that have been classically sort of supporting school choice and private school choice have been the Walton Family Foundation in Arkansas and the DeVos family in Michigan.
Arizonans loving their ESAs too. And Governor Ducey and I just heard from some amazing students this morning about that.
The Institute for Justice and American Federation for Children, backed by Betsy DeVos, pushed vouchers in 2006, and the Supreme Court did end up ruling that unconstitutional in 2009. They said, we can't give public dollars straight to private schools. There's a violation of the separation of church and state. And so special interests took those court orders and said, so what if we just give the money to the parents? Then we're fine, right? They can send it to the private school.
The program was sold to the legislature before I was here as a way to serve a certain population that might not be getting served from a traditional public school.
It's incremental. They start with, oh, let's help the special ed students. Oh, now let's help foster care. Oh, now let's help military families.
And once they use that argument to create vouchers, then every year since then, they've been finding creative ways to expand the the population that can participate in these voucher programs.
Now our special education students have fallen to the bottom as far as receiving these funds.
So how has this move to so-called school choice impacted students across Arizona?
We know that academic instability, educational instability, bouncing around between schools, school closures are really bad for children in general and really bad for at-risk kids in particular. The last 4 voucher evaluations have shown test score drops for kids who move from public to private school that are on par with what Hurricane Katrina did to learning rates in New Orleans after the hurricane hit, and more recently to what COVID-19 did to test scores after exams began to resume.
And yet, turning vouchers into a statewide program was a top priority of former Governor Doug Ducey, who pushed the legislature to pass it in 2017.
We ran a statewide campaign. It was on the ballot in 2018, and Arizona voters overwhelmingly rejected the measure that the legislators had passed. They rejected vouchers 2-1.
The next election, Arizonans voted to tax the rich and fund public schools. But the Republican Ducey-appointed state Supreme Court stepped in and tossed it. Last year, Arizona public schools ranked 49th in the country in teacher pay and graduation rate, and dead last in overall quality.
Education funding has been an issue for my whole life. I'm born and raised in Arizona, and I have never gone to a fully funded public education setting.
Right now it is exhausting to be a public school teacher in Arizona. I am a permanent sub in a middle school because of the teacher shortage.
We don't have aides, we don't have coaches, librarians, right? Music teachers, art teachers, all of that has been stripped away from most of our schools. And our buildings are crumbling.
They don't have the supplies that are required of a public education. Some of our schools are still teaching off books that are so old they don't acknowledge 9/11. It would be impossible to ignore how a lot of what's going on is an organized effort to create an environment that makes it hard for public schools to exist, so that there is this outside pressure pushing families to make choices that where they send their children to charter schools and private schools.
I'm from, southern Arizona. I'm from the border. I'm from Nogales, where we know that there are 1 or 2 private schools, but the rest of the community goes to public school. They have nowhere to go. So at the same moment that their schools are being defunded and told, oh, go to a private school. Well, these rural communities, they don't have private schools to access.
Instead of funding public education, taxpayer money is going to places such as Great Heart Schools, run by a right-wing Christian school that has a long history of discrimination against students and families. The school is expanding, opening academies that cost $7,000 a year, or the value of a voucher. These schools can accept or reject any student they want, as can private elite schools.
It's become a government-facilitated, self-segregation, where we have entire charter schools that are devout of diversity.
We've seen instances where private schools find out that the student has 2 moms or 2 dads, and then all of a sudden that student is put out because that doesn't go along with their their mission statement or their values. And so these are public taxpayer dollars that are used to discriminate against students and families.
If they're not discriminatory, many of these private and charter schools are for-profit grifts, more concerned with siphoning off cash than educating kids.
It's another big story in 2018 that will carry over into the new year. How charter school owners are becoming millionaires by legally profiting off the schools in many ways that would be illegal for a public school district.
Eddie Farnsworth, who was a lawmaker, he created another company with lobbyists to buy his schools from him, and he made close to $14 million.
They're not looking out for the best interests of the students. They're looking out for their bottom line.
New Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs has opposed vouchers, and she's seeking to roll back the program to end student exploitation and avoid defunding public schools.
Do not believe the false narrative that that this is power to the parent and this is what students from across the tracks need to be successful. This is a grift. This is a national push to privatize education, to take money from our taxpayer. It's a lot of money. There's a lot of money to be made on education. Arizona is ground zero. We are the petri dish where all of this was born, but this is a national push to privatize. Make no mistake about it.